Hello. I am on 8th period Google Classroom, ready to start the cellular transport lecture. If we scroll down, you'll see why we're doing this recording. You guys voted on it due to the fire drill that we had. And here we are to the assignment that was posted this morning on cellular transport. So I'm just going to click that, take a look at the instructions that we have here. I've got the agenda posted. We're going to start with the cellular transport PowerPoint, and then of course you have guided notes available to you that were added here in the attachments at the bottom. I've also added the class website to this morning's link, this morning's reminder that today was a B-Day, and you're welcome to click that as well. It'll take you to the information regarding today's class as well. There are two short activities. Those will be a separate video just because they're meant to help as a check for understanding, to make sure that you kind of understand what's going on. Those are required there after this one. And then we've already practiced to make sure that you were able to get into School City. That's fantastic. Finally, you'll have an independent practice, which you will not need me for. That is what this whole recording thing is for, and that is the movement of materials through the cell membrane. At the end of class, that is what is required to be submitted through Google Classroom and will be graded. So without further ado, we only have a short bit of time together, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the PowerPoint here, and actually I already have it open, so just to save us the trouble of loading it, let's go ahead and get started. So today we're working on cellular processes. This is a very, very long unit, which is why the notes were a bit more truncated, I guess, chunked, as opposed to giving you the notes for the entire unit, because it's just a lot. And today we're focusing on cellular transport, but before we talk about transporting molecules in and out of the cell, we kind of need to know a few vocab words first. These are some words you may have seen in IPC or chemistry if you've taken that before this class. That would be the word solvent and solute. So a solvent, we're generally talking about water, especially when we're talking about liquid solutions, but a solvent is something that dissolves molecules, basically. And a solute is the substance being dissolved. For example, the image that we have on the PowerPoint is water and a lump of salt. So what's going to happen is that salt will be dissolved in the water solution, and then we end up with a saltwater solution. Wow, never heard of that before. We can also do this with something like sugar. Sugar is a pretty popular solute as well. You can make things like sugar water, or you could be a normal person and drink sugar in your coffee. I'm personally not, I'm trying to stay away from sugar, so I'm using a substitute. It's actually my protein powder I use in the morning. So when I made my coffee this morning, I have my big jug of coffee, which is just water that's been filtered through coffee grinds, okay? And then it dissolved my solute, which was the protein powder. So just put one scoop of that in there, mixed it up, and boom, now I've got my fancy coffee. Woo! It's important to talk about because we are made up of a lot of water, and so that's what we find in the cells when we're talking about them. And we talk about things going in and out, transporting in and out of cells. We also mentioned something called a cell membrane, which we've talked about with the organelles that encompass a cell. A cell membrane is kind of like a chain link fence, if you will. It's going to allow some things in and some things out. Yeah. Okay, that's the point of the cell membrane. Remember, it also contains everything that makes up that cell as well. Okay, without the cell membrane, you wouldn't have any type of boundary or anything really holding those items together. So it does play a very important role in the cell's daily functions. Now, a cell membrane is actually made up of mostly lipids, and we call it phospholipid actually because it's got two parts. So lipids, if you remember from last class when we talked about biomolecules, lipid is one of those 4 biomolecules. We have lipids, proteins, carbs, and nucleic acids. Nucleic acid would be like our DNA, and then the other 3 we talked about how we could get those from things that we eat. And then we use those macromolecules or biomolecules in our body. Here's one example of how we use those lipids, which would be like fats, butters, oils. And actually, it's good to think about an example of like butter and oil. You know, they repel water. They don't like to stick together. Well, it's important because that's something that we need them to do as a cell membrane, is they have to be able to separate that water that is inside the cell from what's outside of the cell. So what we see with our cell membrane is, first of all, there are 2 layers. Okay, you'll notice the head and the tail on the left, and then a head and the tail on the right. Those tails face each other because the tails are nonpolar. They repel water. Okay, that's why they're on the inside, because we have water on the inside and the outside of the cell. So that's why the heads face outwards, because they actually attract water. Fun fact. I have a short video over the membrane structure that I'd really like you guys to watch. Because of our time constraint with this recording, I'm going to trust that you'll watch it on your own, and we'll just keep moving on. But it does recap what we've already talked about. It also mentions that we have multiple structures found within in the cell membrane, not just those lipids. The lipids make up the basic structure, but you'll find proteins kind of wedged in between some of those lipids, and occasionally some like cholesterol and a few other things. But these proteins in particular are extremely important. Okay, they allow cells to communicate with one another and for those cells to respond to their environment. So, extremely important role that they play. In fact, we see them in like playing roles in communication with the immunology system, which is like all about our health and keeping us safe and healthy. We also see these proteins playing a role in allowing certain things in and out of the cell. And yeah, that's going to help us maintain what's called homeostasis. We've talked about homeostasis a few times actually. It's one of the 5 characteristics required in order for an organism to be considered living. Okay, so in order to be considered living, remember you need to be made of cells, be able to reproduce, have genetic material, be able to, have a steady metabolism, and then having that metabolism goes hand in hand. Having that metabolism goes hand in hand with being able to maintain a steady balance, which is homeostasis. So homeostasis is all about regulating or controlling that balance. We always want things balanced. We do not want one person here and one person there, or one concentration of something here and there on the other side. We want them to be as even as possible. Okay, so it's super important. When we talk about cellular transport, we are talking about 2 different types of cell transport, one being passive, the other active. The way that I like to think about it is we have when you're active, you need energy. Okay, active, even when we're talking about students in class, I can say an active student is going to be someone that's going to respond and someone that's going to continue talking and being very involved and active in the lesson. A passive student is someone that is just sitting there sleeping, not doing anything, not paying much attention or mind to anything that's going on around them. Just as an example. So if we take a look at 3 of the examples of passive transport systems, we have diffusion, also known as simple diffusion. But it's so simple, it doesn't even need the term simple before it. Yeah. Then we have facilitated diffusion and osmosis. Okay? These 3 examples of passive transport. They're passive, so they don't need energy. There is no energy there. They're passive. They're not doing anything that would require any type of energy. Simple diffusion is where you have very small solutes. Remember, those solutes would be like sugar or salt. It's very small solutes moving directly through the membrane. So they're so small that they can basically just squeeze through those lipids and make it to the other side. No problem. They're always traveling from a higher to a lower concentration. So if we focus on the image, moving from left to right, each panel depicts what's happening over time. So that far left panel shows a very high concentration of solutes on the top side of the cell membrane. And you'll see that these solutes start to move across the membrane so that they can begin to disperse evenly. What I've been telling my other classes is a good way to think of this is if we had like 150 kids in my classroom. Okay, yeah, we could probably fit 150 standing students. Yeah, but would you want to be standing in there with another 149 people? No. So if I open my door, okay, just like you could for a cell, if there's a gate, we can just open it real quick. You'd want to get out, right? You're going to want to disperse throughout the hallway so that you have your own space. You want that personal space, right? So that's the same idea here, and we're going to do that until we're about even, okay? Because that's our goal with maintaining homeostasis. We want to regulate, we want to control the amount of people going in and out of the cell. We want it balanced. That's what I'm trying to get at. We want it balanced. And then we have facilitated diffusion. So facilitated diffusion, same concept where we want it balanced. Things are going to move from high to low again. The difference with facilitated diffusion is that term facilitated. Okay, if you've never heard of the word, here it is, facilitate. You may have heard of a facilitator, someone who facilitates. I would be an example of a facilitator, actually. So to facilitate means to make an action or a process easy or easier. So myself being an example of a facilitator would be, as a teacher, I make the material seem a lot easy or easy or a lot easier to learn. So I help to guide you through that learning process, as opposed to just throwing a textbook in front of your face and saying, here, learn it, like teach yourself, basically. And we use proteins, actually. So here's where these proteins come into play. These molecules are basically too large to cross directly through the membrane. So we have either a protein channel, which is that image on the far left that kind of just looks like a hot dog bun. It's quite literally a channel that proteins can just walk right through. Or we have carrier proteins. So they basically open, grab a molecule, open again. So the carrier protein sits in the middle of the membrane, and it basically just takes it from one side to the other. Easy peasy. But we have to have some help, and that's the purpose of having the protein there. So those molecules are either too large to shimmy through the membrane on their own, or they have some sort of an electrical charge. Yep, so again, high to low, high concentration to low concentration. Now, here are some GIFs. I know we love those. On the right, of course, we have the facilitated diffusion showing you how that protein channel would work. And then on the left, again, another GIF of diffusion. It's all about dispersion. Okay. Oh goodness, I didn't mean to click on that, sorry. So we are running out of time for this first recording. We are going to pause here, and I'd like you to look out for the second recording. I will continue passive transport, which is osmosis. That's all we have left. And then I'll complete active transport. So I'll see you guys in the next video.